Hi everyone, my name is Amy. Welcome to the next FEMTalks session. Today we have our guest, Lily Sun. Lily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, guys. I'm Lily. I graduated from Ivy Business School in 2020. While I was there, I studied business and I was in the HBA program. I did a bunch of different internships, realized I really like the startup life, and right now I work at Three Ships Beauty. We are a skincare brand making 100% plant-derived skincare that work for all skin types. So the team is 8 women. We're a really small team based in Toronto, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
Awesome. Sounds like the startup world is really interesting.
Yep.
So piggybacking off of that, so we wanted to ask you about startups in general. We know that startups require you to play kind of like a variety of roles and be super flexible. Throughout your experience working at Three Ships so far, what would you say is the greatest skill that you've learned?
Yeah, really great question. I think anyone who works in a startup would say you learn so many different skills. Every day is different. You don't do the same thing twice. You're always, doing things that you feel like you have no idea what you're doing, but you just kind of learn along the way you go. I would say the biggest skill I've learned is not letting age hold you back. So I think for a lot of people in undergrad who pursue more traditional career paths, you're an analyst for a year or two, and then you're a consultant, and then you're a manager, and then you're a senior manager, and then you're a VP. So people are very aware of the career progression. And I feel like sometimes you can feel like you can't make any decisions until you're a manager, right? Like, oh, I'm just an analyst. I'm just 22 years old. I can't make any decisions. I don't know what I'm doing. At a startup, I literally say everyone is a CEO. Like everyone makes their own decisions. And, I'm fresh out of school. I'm 23. And sometimes I feel like I make decisions that like a senior executive would probably make at a different firm. And you have to be okay with making those tough decisions. And, you have to be okay with things not going out the way they planned. But I think being at a startup really teaches you that age is not really a limit and you can do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter how old you are. So I would say that's the biggest skill I learned. And I think it's a pretty important skill for everyone to have and to be able to do.
I like that. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
you spoke about how you play so many roles at a startup and you have so many shots to call. Um, Talking about your time going back to undergrad, since undergrad we know it's like a time for you to explore your hobbies and
hmm
explore what you're interested in, what you want to do in the future in your career. So how would you say your time at Western and Ivy in general kind of guided you more towards doing startups rather than like a corporate world or like any other field, for example?
Yeah, another really great question. I feel like I can't name any specific experience that was like, I have to go into startups, like this is the path for me. It was more so how many diverse experiences and extracurriculars that I was part of that made me realize I was more suited to work in startups. So when I was at Western, I played on the Ultimate Frisbee team. I was an exec on the Canadian Asian International Student Association. I worked part time as a barista at Starbucks. And then when I got to Ivy, I was the co-president of the Ivy Consulting Club, but I was also the VP of marketing at the Women in Tech Society. So it was such a diverse and weird like group of activities that I would be a part of. Like some days I would be wearing, sporty clothes and going to play sports. Other days I was in a blazer, like taking business meetings. And I really thrived off of that. Like I feel like for me, if I was only in business clubs or if I was only playing sports, I wouldn't have had as much fun doing them because it was the same thing every day. And I feel like with some jobs, that is the case, right? Like you're in this position, you kind of do the same work every day. But for me, I wanted to do something different all the time. And I feel like the only place you can get that is at a startup where things are so flexible and one day you're working on one marketing project, the other day you're working on an ops project. So if you are someone who thrives off of different experiences, then I would say definitely look into startups and see if that's good for you.
Yeah, I really like your insights because I feel like that's not really talked about as much, or like that's not really an aspect of startup that is like as mentioned as much as like flexibility in general. Um, so kind of like Moving on to like when you after graduation now and your professional career, what would you say is the most helpful piece of advice that someone gave you, actually, whether it be professionally or through summer internships that you completed while in school?
Yeah, definitely a lot of different pieces of advices. Like I worked 3 different internships and then a full-time job. So definitely learned a lot along the way. I have 3 that I put down as like most influential or like things that people have said that I remembered and that I think is good to share. The first one is taking the risk and failing is almost always better than not taking the risk. I feel like at a lot of different times in your life, you're at like a crossroad and one that is a very safe option that you feel very comfortable doing, but like you don't know if you'll be happy there. And then the other option obviously is more exciting, but you feel like, oh, like things might not work out well. I was in a very similar position when I was deciding whether or not to work at 3 shifts or to work in consulting. And someone's like, honestly, like taking the risk and failing is just always better. Like you just feel better versus you choosing the safe decision and having the feeling of like, oh, like this could have worked out. Like, that's always like probably the worst feeling for you. So I would recommend taking the risk. Second most helpful piece of advice is do what makes you happy today. Like just do what makes you happy today, not like what'll make you happy down the road. I don't know if you experienced this like in undergrad, but there's a lot of people who say, do 2 years in like consulting or like do a couple years in like a safe job and then find like the job you really like. So I feel like that's tough because what's the point of spending 2 years doing something you don't really like to do when like you don't even know if you'll get to do what you want to do down the road. So I would just focus on doing what makes you happy today. Like does this decision make me satisfied today because you never really know if tomorrow is guaranteed or not. And then the third thing which I really love as like a helpful piece of advice is number 1, like, know that you don't know everything, and then know that no one knows everything. I think is a really helpful piece of advice because definitely when I started my role, I was working with a lot of people who are 10 years older than me. I was always the youngest person in any meeting or the youngest person making a decision. And I just always felt like, there must be something they know. Like they must be smarter than me. There's like a secret thing that like everybody knows except for me because I'm new. And it's just not the case. Like nobody knows everything. You always look at the person who's further ahead in front of you and you think that they have something you don't. But honestly, like everyone is just guessing and doing their own thing. So I wouldn't really take that seriously. And I think that helps a lot with imposter syndrome. Yeah,
Yeah, I like that you touched upon that because a lot of times we obviously like, oh, obviously we don't know anything. We're a newcomer, we're young, but then to know that other people kind of also don't really know what they're doing, and the only thing that's different is like age and experience. It
that's the
seems
only thing.
it's very comforting to hear, especially as like undergrad students for sure. Uh,
Yeah, I think one thing that was really funny to me is I remember being in first year
mhm.
and we went to a panel with fourth years. And I remember sitting in that panel like, oh my gosh, when I'm in fourth year,
That's
I'm
me.
gonna know everything, right? Like, they have it all planned out. They're so smart, they're so strategic. And then literally I was in fourth year, I was like, I have no idea what's going like we don't know anything. Don't like I literally feel like I still don't know anything. So we are all the same, just a couple years older. That's it.
I like that advice actually. It's really comforting, especially for like first, second years, especially.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think this is we have time for one more question. It's just
Okay.
about like now, like we're moving on from school. Now we're in your professional career. We know that Booster is founded by like super powerful women, and you're around a lot of female entrepreneurs and female like go-getters. Um, Based on a statistic we found online, we saw that only 25% of founders of startups identify as female. And since you're working at a female founded startup, how has working alongside these different female leaders kind of changed your perception of what entrepreneurship and leadership is?
Yeah. It's just been so great. Like we're a female founded team, but we're also a female run team. So our entire team is women. And it has just shown me that women are incredible and can pretty much do anything that they set their minds to. I think with a lot of like other startups, the belief is, women are too soft or we aren't too nice or whatever that might be. But working at three shifts has shown me that you can lead with kindness and compassion, and that will not negatively impact your business. Like being nice to your employees, taking care of your mental health, showing kindness, showing compassion does not make you weaker, does not negatively impact your business. Like we've been able to build a really successful brand while still having that level of compassion. And at the same time, I think women are just a lot stronger than you think. I know the stat is like 25% of founders identify as women, but there's no doubt for me that that stat will continue to increase. I think women are just more free and open to follow their dreams and follow their passions. So I'm really excited. I hope to one day be a female founder so I can maybe 26%, add to the statistic. Um, and it's been great. Like I love my team so much. They're more than just my teammates, they're my family, and it's just been a great time working with them.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. I love the advocacy for female empowerment and for future female entrepreneurs and leaders, even if it can be kind of intimidating, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation we've had is really great to hear, especially for me or other first, second, and third years to hear about overcoming imposter syndrome and kind of just pursuing what you really want to do rather than falling into the traps of business school, for example, or like Ivy or undergrad. And you talking about your experiences while in university and even now has really, I feel like it will really help the rest of us kind of be able to navigate where we want to go and our goals that we want to have in the future. Yeah, so thank you so much for having this conversation with me. All of your insights have been super helpful. Do you have
No
any other
problem.
questions or concerns or anything you want to add?
No, thank you for having me. I think this is such a great platform for different female leaders to share what they believe, and I hope it inspires people to do whatever makes them happy. And yeah, I'd love to see what people think of this.
Also,